Okay, awesome. So my first question would be to know a little more about you and your background. And just if you could further emphasize that, because I've done my research, but I want my classmates to know more of who you are.
Well, I'm a social worker by profession. Um, I have been a social worker since 1980.
Oh, wow.
And I started doing this work pretty much since the very beginning, even before I graduated, because I started doing it like as an intern. And I love this work. And I'm born and raised in San Antonio. I think we're like fourth generation Mexican Americans. My family comes from, let me see, Aguascalientes, Nuevo León, and Chihuahua. Those are the three states in Mexico that our family comes from. And I don't know. What else do you want to know?
So I did some research of my own, and you wear so many different hats, and your career expands like so much, which is completely impressive. And so I just wanted to know, like, further within the organization, what started it and what was the motivation behind the P.E.A.C.E Initiative?
Okay. So that came about because at the time that I was approached to come and work for the Benedictine sisters, I was working inside Bexar County Jail. And I was running a program called MATCH, which is an acronym for Mothers and Their Children. And I did not know this, but the Catholic chaplain, who at the time was Sister Frances Briceño, had been watching me, had been watching me work with the women inmates, had been watching me work with their families and with their children. And they had just embarked upon, selling their hospital. They used to own a hospital and a nursing home in the King William area. And they had just sold that for, I don't know, 10 or $15 million or something. And they wanted to start, some work in the San Antonio community with some of that funding, right? With some of that funding. They already had some work going on, like at the public policy level in Austin, that addressed issues of, gerontology and geriatrics and, stuff that impacted elder people's lives, right? But they wanted to do something more, closer to home and that impacted San Antonio. But they just didn't know like what to do or how to do it, how to go about doing it. And so they asked me if I would come work for them. And, and I was like, well, okay. I thought I'd try it. I wasn't sure what they wanted me to do. And I asked them for a job description, and they said, well, your job description is you're going to develop programming that affects the lives of women and children in our name. We're Roman Catholic nuns, but, we don't have the connections that you do. And we're not part of the grassroots, level of community like you are. And, we figure that you would be a good fit. And I said, okay, all right. So I was scared to death, but, I took the chance. I took the chance back in 1990 and went to work for the sisters, and it was awesome. I worked for them for 13 years from 1990 until 2003. And during that time, I wasn't sure like what area to go into. I mean, I had background, in terms of, seeing what was affecting our community, and when you work inside a jail, you get to really see like how people's lives, are affected when there's bad things happening, right? And so I decided to fall back on my community organizing experience. And I said, why am I freaking out and, killing myself trying to figure out what to do when community will tell me what to do? Community has to inform my work. And so I just went back to grassroots and started meeting with people from all over the city, anybody and everybody that was serving people. And over and over again, what kept popping up was family violence, violence against women, child abuse, all of those things. And, that nobody wanted to take that on. Nobody wanted to address it. So that was it. That was what we were told. And we just took it from there. And so our first angle was to educate the community about domestic violence, because we knew that this wasn't like common knowledge. It was still very taboo, to talk about those private matters, private family matters. And so I just decided to, open it up and get it out there. And then the first institution that we were charged with going after was law enforcement. Oh, wow. Because that's what everybody complained about. Yeah. That law enforcement, how is it that these people get away with what they do and law enforcement just sits idly by? Yeah. And so that's where we got started.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Hear that. So in 2019, you were named as a laureate by the Interfaith San Antonio Peace Center. And I wanted to know what was that experience like, and how have you transferred it into your life's work and within the organization?
Well, with us being called the P.E.A.C.E Initiative, that was a name that we decided to take on as, back in 1990, because survivors of domestic violence told us, we want to live in peace. We want our children to grow up in a peaceful community. We want our relationships to know peace. And so we had been doing this work forever, and so by 2019, it was clear what we were about, right? And so being named one of the Peace Laureates, along with Rebecca Flores and with Nikki Valdez, who Nikki already has died and passed on, but Rebecca's still around, and Rebecca's still working hard in the community at addressing issues of violence and abuse and abuses of power, right? Just as we are. And so to me, it just felt like, an added title to to the work that we were doing, and we just had to keep doing what we're doing. And but we're able to now add that name and that title and that recognition of our work, of several decades of addressing it and bringing it up and being consistent and being credible and being respected. And so we just, we kept on keeping on. That's what we did, with that title. And but it was a nice recognition. And I love that I was, one of those three, for 2019, because those women are just, oh my God, just to be, Rebecca worked with Cesar Chavez.
Oh, wow.
She was one of his top organizers, with Cesar Chavez. I'm like, I'm still in awe, and so to be alongside, women of that caliber and with that background and that history. And Nikki took on power structures when, still in this country, they kill you for being gay, and she did that work, way back, when nobody talked about that, and nobody, in some countries it's, it was like illegal, and she was not gonna, be shut down, and she was not gonna hide her identity. And then she did it in the face of the Roman Catholic Church. Like, she took on the Roman Catholic Church, was trying to, like, get her to hide her identity and who she was, and to not be a faithful person. And she was a faithful, faith-filled person, till the day she died.
Sorry about the background noise. So sorry. It's my apartment.
They're doing the lawn?
Yes. Inconveniently. Okay. You can continue if you would like. I'm so sorry about that.
It's okay. So she to be in that grouping, with women, who just, to me, I remain awestruck, to be included with women of that caliber, as a Peace Laureate.
Awesome. That's beautiful. And so what are your most urgent needs at the P.E.A.C.E Initiative, or some of y'all's goals within the organization?
Well, right now, I need to hire a lawyer. I have funding to pay a lawyer to represent poor women and men who are dealing with issues of domestic violence. And so that's a big priority for us, is to be able to, address the needs. The two biggest needs that victims of domestic violence have are lack of legal representation and housing. Okay. Most people don't realize that homelessness is, directly, created by domestic violence, cases of domestic violence. And so a lot of times people, leave those situations, and you might leave and flee and get away, but that doesn't mean that you're safe. And that doesn't mean that, you're going to easily remedy your situation. And so, and the vast majority of people don't have, like $5,000 lying around, for that day when you decide, I'm going to get a divorce because I don't want to be in a situation of abuse and violence anymore. People live paycheck to paycheck. And another thing is that most people don't realize that San Antonio is a poor city. We're a very poor city. We're the most economically segregated city in the nation. And so that leaves a lot of people very vulnerable when you don't have access, to the resources you need to fix your situation of abuse and violence. It's not uncommon for abused women to seek help, and you ask them, well, how long have you been trying to get a divorce? Oh, I've been separated for 15 years. What? What do you mean you've been separated for 15 years? Yeah, I've never been able to afford a lawyer, and it's like unreal, that in one of the wealthiest nations on the planet, people suffer these kinds of circumstances. But that's because we don't tax the rich. We need to tax the rich so that people can, have a life and do well. I mean, I to me, it's beyond my comprehension how, folks don't understand that if the family does well, so does your community. But if your families are suffering and your families are victimized and your families are poor and your families are uneducated and your families are beat down, and oppressed, then that's what your country is going to look like and feel like. And people just don't get it, and that really is a huge concern of mine. And one of the reasons why I stay with this work and I'm committed to it, because I know, that when you help families do well, then everything and everybody around them also does well. And there's a ripple effect, that people don't see and don't understand. And but that's the reality. It's really worth helping people do better.
And so, what are some of the values and principles within the P.E.A.C.E Initiative that you would like to emphasize?
Well, the values that we have strived for are, of course, peace, just like the survivors have told us, I want to live in peace. Another thing, like early on in our work, people accused us of, busting up the family, attacking the institution of the family. That's not what we're about. Survivors have always told us, I don't want to get a divorce. I don't want to leave my family. I don't want to separate my family. I want my children to grow up with their father. I want, them to have a good relationship with both parents. They've always said those kinds of things to us. But when you're not safe, and somebody's trying to kill you, the person that's supposed to most love you is trying to kill you, then our work becomes redirected, and we've got to help people be safe. So safety, respect, equality, nonviolence. We teach parenting classes that we don't espouse corporal punishment. We don't want parents to be hitting their children, because that's where we plant the seeds of violence and abuse. Even though 80% of this nation, 80% of parents believe that hitting your children is an important way to raise them and to discipline them, and we do not stand for that. That is not a good thing to do to children, because that's where you begin the traumatization. So nonviolence, in every part of life, no hitting, communication, open communication, respecting diversity, being able to help build community. Again, we know that when the families do well, then a community can thrive. We want to move away from this whole idea. It's like, well, they're surviving. It's like, what is survival? Come on, being able to eat and breathe. Come on. We want people to thrive. We want people to do well. We want people to, have goals and have a vision of, anything and everything that they would love to create and espouse to and live up to and become, right? And we know that when families are safe and are healthy and are civically involved. I mean, like I talk about in my classes of ending domestic violence, I talk about people's civic engagement. That if you want to have a community, for example, where every institution you run into or you have to deal with cares about your health and well-being, then you need to vote. You need to, lift up your voice and elect people that represent your values, because if we just keep electing judges, for example, who, set low bonds for abusers and let them out, easily out of jail and don't hold them accountable, then the violence is never going to stop. You know what I'm saying? So there's a lot of things that have to happen, in your community to change the systems that are in place to hold people accountable. And so we're about systems change work. We're about, doing, a paradigm shift. We're challenging the power structure, basically. We're challenging the power structure, and the power structure has for generations and generations and generations, supported the fact that, one person in a relationship, if they want to, they have the right to have power and dominance over the other person. No, we don't accept that. That's just an attitude and a belief that can be changed, that can be stopped. I mean, yesterday I was in a meeting with a bunch of faith leaders, and one of the Black women in the group said, that's like slavery. I mean, if you want to just, keep beating on people, that's like, okay, well, we should have just stayed in the days of slavery, and I was like, oh my God, finally somebody made the connection, and so, because that's what we're doing, we're allowing when cops don't arrest a perpetrator, and when they clearly can see, that he's got blood on his knuckles and she's got a black eye and a busted lip, and they won't arrest him, they're like sending a powerful message that your behavior is okay. We're not upset about it. You can keep doing it, and we can't have that. We can't have that, and so we're about accountability, and we're about, standing up, for people being able to feel loved and respected and nurtured in their home environment. And then, like we also work with groups like Moms Demand Action, who are about, communities and their country setting up gun sense laws to protect people from, the over proliferation of weapons. We have weapons everywhere. I mean, yesterday when I saw that news report of a woman being shot in the face, I thought to myself, oh my God, that's 2 women being shot in the face within a 7-day period in my city. What is going on? How can we have this be happening? But that's because weapons are everywhere and easily attained. and accessible. And now you can walk around carrying weapons anywhere and everywhere because our government has instituted permitless carry in the state of Texas, you know? And so we know that when there's domestic violence and weapons in the same household, the chances of somebody being murdered increased by 500%. You know, so we cannot have, you know, weapons willy-nilly everywhere in the hands of anybody and everybody because people die. And even like another thing that came out of that is last year in Texas, 40 men were killed by their female partners with a gun. And so, you know, all of those women more than likely were defending themselves. And so, you know, again, because of the presence of weapons, somebody's going to die. And so in the state of Texas, now you're having more and more men be killed also. So, you know, there's a heavy price to pay, you know, when, you know, we allow for these kinds of practices and policies to go into effect.
Awesome. Powerful. And so where do you see the P.E.A.C.E Initiative within the next 5 years or so?
Well, I'm hoping that to be retired within the next 5 years and leaving somebody in my place that will carry on, you know, and grow the mission of this work to, you know, be able to continue serving the community because we you know, we're kind of stuck because of these setbacks, you know, of weapons being everywhere and you know, we really do need to, you know, we have things happening at the national level, for example, like, you know, the holding up of the passage of the Violence Against Women Act, you know, that stymies our growth and that gets in the way of federal dollars coming into local communities. So we need, you know, to grow that commitment from our political leaders to make sure that all of us have the funding that we need to address these issues at the local level. And, you know, like I said, we suffer the most from a lack of legal representation and from a lack of housing, you know, so we need to be working on developing the possibility of ensuring that victims that are trying to get out of those situations have somewhere to go, have housing to look forward to, separate from a situation where they're victimized and abused. So I feel like we need to just focus on that, you know, and, you know, and make sure that they have access to protective orders, you know, to keep the people that are trying to victimize them away from them, and then to create more of an awareness in our community of holding them accountable. And we also need to grow the work with men. We need more men involved in the work. We need more men speaking out against violence against women, because the vast majority of cases remain male violence being perpetrated against females. And so we need to grow the work with the men. I think for so many people, this is still considered a quote unquote woman's issue. This is not a woman's issue. This is a social problem that includes the commission of violent crime, you know, from one sector of our society against another sector of our society. And, you know, that affects everybody, a whole community, you know, not just the women. Okay. Plus, we're beginning to see horrific numbers in terms of teen dating violence. So our youth are now replicating the behavior of the adults. And so our youth need, for example, the male role models, that show them that that's not the way, that represent for the young people, the young men and women of our society, that violence is not the way to be in a relationship. And so that part of our work really must grow. There must be more emphasis there. In our faith meeting, for example, yesterday, we had like 15 women and 3 men. That's not good. In one of the first trainings that I did for the faith community, also, just very lopsided, with much more women than men. And yet the men in the vast majority of the churches are the ones that are speaking from the pulpit. So you see what I'm saying? We need those authority figures to be speaking about this issue from the pulpit, leading their flocks in a way towards peace in the family, and not just counting on the women congregation members to do the worker bee work. We need leadership, and that still needs a lot of cultivation and a lot of motivation.
Awesome. And so if I wanted to be involved within your organization or one of my classmates, how would we be able to go about that? And where are you located?
Well, still to this day, we remain, everybody's working from home. All of our staff members remain working from home. We still have an office in the San Antonio Mennonite Church, but we don't use that office at all, because the other thing that's going on is that the church itself is a very old church, and it's going through massive renovation on the first floor. And so there's a lot of banging and sawing and drilling, and so it's not conducive to the kind of work that we do, right? To be in that space. And we're just now beginning to get out into the community and do presentations in person. So probably, it won't be until next year before we start looking at being actively involved out in the community, and actively involved in, engaging face to face and in person with community.
Okay, awesome. And in what ways could we donate to your organization?
Well, donating to the organization, right now, of course, if anybody wants to donate financially, you can do that through our website. The peaceinitiative.net has a donate button that you can give through there. We also, people still send us paper checks, and they mail them to right now. I'm having all my peace mail sent to my home address. So people can, send me their donations written out to the P.E.A.C.E Initiative, but to my home address. And you're welcome to call me and at 210-632-1996, and I'm happy to share that information with you. And contact me also through email, which is patpeacesa@gmail.com. And we can make arrangements that way as well. And we're still doing all of our training and education and presentations through Zoom. And that remains, how we, our main access to the community at this point.
Awesome. Well, I want want to thank you so much for meeting with me today. I've
You're
really
welcome.
enjoyed your words and your experience. It's so inspiring, and I cannot wait to share this with my professor and classmates, and also you as well. So thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Thank you.
You're welcome. Nice meeting you. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye.